I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda.
All right,
I'd like to see if we can move items 6A and 9A
All right.
to potential consent. They are perfunctory law issues.
Second.
okay.
We're meeting the law.
Okay, so you're looking to move item 6A, which is the meeting street report and request for waiver, and,
9A, which is the PE credit for marching band.
okay. So we have a motion
Second.
and a second, and to move items 6A and 9A to the potential consent. Okay, does anybody have any discussion on that? Okay, so Julie, okay, it's open, all right.
I think we go to the
All right.
administrator, but I'm not
Erica,
100% certain.
can you come and help Eric?
Did you vote?
All right, hold on one sec. So, since
Priscilla,
you're
you
not in,
voted?
I think it took me out of the system.
so
Not on this thing, 'cause
how
I'm
do you
not in.
vote? So Eric is not in the system yet, but he votes yes.
Wait a second. So are we supposed to be an administrator? What are we supposed to be?
All right.
It should be in, if you go to
Priscilla, how do you vote on the agenda change?
the
Yes?
CCSD website.
Dobbs, how do you vote?
And that'll
To the
be-
agenda?
Sure, I guess. I don't,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
How do I go?
And Mr. Miller? Mr. Miller, how do you vote to, sorry, how do you vote to,
And Cindy's motion was to move item 6A and 9A to consent?
yes. Yes, that's what her motion was.
And then
Okay.
click on it.
Are you comfortable with that? Okay, so Michael votes aye.
.CCSD.
And then you should be able to log in there.
Okay, all right. So, the next item is I need a motion to convene executive session. All right, we have a motion to convene executive session. Do I have a
Julie?
second?
Yes.
Okay,
These two are in board docs without an option to join the meeting.
okay,
Am I not in the
okay.
meeting? Okay.
All right, so let's
Are
vote.
you in? Can you vote?
I have no idea. Call to order.
And try adoption of the agenda. We don't vote to adopt the agenda.
Can I go in to join the meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
she's now in joining the meeting.
Okay, all right.
She's in.
Let's pause on that.
How do
for
I
just
join
a
the meeting?
Pause for that for just a second. We have a motion on the floor and a second to go into executive session. All in favor of going into executive session signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to go into executive session, and so just hold on, Michael, I'll bring you on the phone.
Okay.
All right, Todd, you're okay on the computer? Okay, okay.
We'll keep doing it. I'll do that.
Can we get you a new password? Yep,
So you're set, because that's good, so now go.
all right. Okay. We are reconvening our open session for September 24th, 2018.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion to amend the agenda, please?
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the agenda. Do I have a second?
I move to change item number 8C to immediately follow an executive session item.
Okay, so you want to move item 8C, which is on page 9 of our paper agenda, to immediately following consideration of executive session items.
Yes.
I
Okay?
have no problem with that. I'll second that.
So we have a motion from Mr. Garrett and a second from Ms. Coates. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, all in favor of making that change to the agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so don't let me miss that. Okay, if everybody will please stand for a moment of silence and then join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just to everybody who's here for our meeting, I just want to let you know we're using a new computer system, Board Docs, for the second time. So just be patient with us as we move through trying to do that as efficiently as possible. So the next item is the approval of minutes from August, board minutes from August 27th and September 10th.
Approved.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Garrett and a second from Ms. Jeffrey to approve the minutes. Sorry, I need some water.
Madam Chair, can we separate those out simply because I was not at one of those meetings, so I cannot vote for
Yes.
both?
Okay, all right, so we're going to separate those out. So the first item will be approving the minutes from August 27th. And then the second item, which we have a motion from Mr. Garrett and a second from Priscilla. And then, let's do that first. So the August 27th minutes. So Julie, you're good? All right, so we'll have something pop up on our computers in just a second for us to vote. There it is.
Here?
Yes?
You still have Mr. Miller by telephone?
Yes, Mr.
I'll let the
Miller?
audience know.
Yeah, Mr. Miller is on the phone. So since you're on the phone, Mr. Miller, how do you vote on the August 27th minutes?
So it has-
Mr. Miller? Well, he said his battery was about to die, so. Oh, Mr. Miller, you there?
I am now.
Sorry, we had muted you. So how do you vote on the August 27th minutes? We're just in vote, can you hear us? Okay, okay. And how do you vote for the August 27th minutes?
Do that.
Aye.
All right, there we go. Okay. So has everybody voted?
Mine doesn't have a vote.
Okay,
I just want to make,
it's going to be that, so.
No, I'll wait till it pops up then.
Austin.K12.
Has everybody else voted?
I haven't voted.
Priscilla?
I'm not on that page yet.
Mine didn't.
I haven't logged in. I'm trying to remember
Okay,
to log
so
in.
let's do this.
But I'll do a manual vote.
All right, let's do manual vote on, we're doing the August 27th minutes while Julie's working on that. Mr. Hollenshed, how do you vote?
Yay?
Ms. Coates?
Yes.
Mr. Garrett?
Yes.
Reverend Collins?
I vote no for the reasons that, in my opinion, the notes are deficient and lack details.
Oh, okay. Ms. Jeffrey? Yes. Miller already voted yes. Mr. Staubs?
Yes.
Reverend Mack?
Why is it?
yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes. All right, so so let's pause for just a second.
Who needs
Chris-
help getting logged in?
Right, let's get them help getting logged in. Mr. Staubs and
I'm logging again.
Reverend Collins. All right, so do we have a motion to approve the September 10th minutes?
So moved.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. So we have a motion from Todd and a second from Priscilla for the September 10th minutes. Do we have any discussion? So Julie, you're going to send that to us? All right, that's been sent to us, so vote. Yep. Everybody got it on their screen? Todd?
Got it on yours.
Yes.
Okay. Chris, you got it?
Yep, I voted.
Okay, everybody voted.
I vote no.
Mr. Miller, and how do you vote on the
Excellent.
September 10th minutes?
Aye.
Yep, okay. Mr. Miller voted.
He's
I
not
vote
logged in.
no.
He's not in yet. So vote no for him. Are we getting you in, Reverend Collins?
Yeah, I'll be in just a minute.
Okay. Okay, got it. All right, so that motion passes.
I hit nay by accident.
Yeah. Okay, so
Don't worry about it.
now we're on item 4, consideration of executive session items. Our first item, item A, is a personnel matter.
For A, I move to approve the forwarding of formal complaints to the Department of Education related to the attached teachers.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Garrett, and we have a second from Reverend Mack. Do we have any questions? All right, so we have a motion and a second. Please go ahead and vote. Mr. Miller, how do you vote? Mr. Miller, we're voting on the personnel?
No.
Okay. Mr. Miller votes no. Julie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reverend Collins, how do you vote?
Well, I don't agree with the process. So
Okay.
I vote no.
Reverend Collins votes no. Okay. All right. All right, so the motion passes. Okay, the next item on our agenda is item 4B. And this was an item that was brought forward by some board members, but I think we've already, we
All right.
don't need to take action today. Mr. Stobbs?
All right, so this is more of a statement just for the public to know what's going on. This is the matter that's been in the newspaper with the children who were allegedly abused by the teacher who passed away. All right, so the background on this is several of us, or four of us, who made a motion to bring this to the board of directors to look at possibly hiring outside counsel. At the same time, it looks like the district has retained counsel, so this matter has basically been made moot. But we do want to point out to the community that the district has retained outside counsel to investigate this matter and to report findings to the board. Number two, to help the district cooperate with and anticipate outside investigations by the South Carolina House and/or the Department of Education. And number three, to advise on ways to avoid a situation like this from ever happening again. The board of directors, I think all 9 of us, without exception, are horrified by what's happened here, and we want to make sure that this does get investigated and that everything is taken care of so that this never happens again, and that we know what happened here, and that we'll cooperate with the investigations so that justice will be done.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, for the record, I'm not comfortable in the way this matter is being investigated. Just state for the record.
Okay. I just think that the general consensus then from the rest of the board is that we need to move forward with investigation, and that's what we're going to do.
And I do want to, and there'll be an outside investigation, we understand as well, from likely the South Carolina House and from the Department of Education. And part of this process is for us to help facilitate and cooperate with those groups that are doing the investigation, because we want justice to be had.
Okay, the next item is item C, the District 23 Constituent Board vacancy recommendation. Do I have a motion
So move.
to approve? Okay, so we're going along with, the motion is to approve their recommendation, correct? Okay, so we have a motion from Reverend Mack, and we have a second from Mr. Garrett, so please vote. Michael, how do you vote on the D23 vacancy for the constituent board?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Miller votes yes. Reverend Collins, how do you
Yes.
vote? Reverend Collins votes yes, and we're still working on getting him in there. Okay? Okay, so that motion passes. The next item is item 8C, which we moved on the agenda.
Chair, I move to increase all first-year classroom teachers, 0 years of experience on South Carolina certificate, to the second-year teacher salary schedule for the school year, for this school year, 2018-19. This is a salary adjustment, I can't read, is for classroom teachers only as outlined as an allowable rural recruitment initiative expenditure.
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, can we explain what that means? It's retroactive.
Right.
It's for this school year. It's for whom?
It's for first-year teachers. It's for our whole teacher salary schedule.
Yeah, it's for the whole teacher salary schedule, but when you change the first-year teachers, then it changes everybody.
The public needs to be able to understand that we're moving our salary schedule up.
Yeah, Mr. Brigman, why don't you come and give us a quick update on that, please?
So it only impacts first-year teachers, so they're brand-new teachers to teaching. Majority of them are bachelor's degrees. It does not impact the entire teacher salary
Sorry, my
structure.
bad.
It's really a supplement is what's allowed.
So nobody's making a first-year teacher salary after we approve this. They'll all be on year 2.
Classroom teachers, that's correct.
First year.
Year 1.
It's confusing when you say year 2.
They will be on the second step up from initial hiring,
So 0 is what they're on right now,
and we're going to take them one
to
step.
1 technically, which would be,
And we're going to retroactive that to the beginning of their contract.
Yes,
for the
ma'am.
school year.
correct.
And could you just real quickly, so everybody knows where this funding is coming from? So-
Certainly. I had a quick PowerPoint, but we won't go there for time. But I found out the district, Dr. Postaway and I were notified in July that Charleston County School District is participating this year in the Rural Teacher Recruitment Initiative, which is approved by the state. We received $1.6 million for this initiative. It's for this year. I can send you more information. I know we discussed it at the last board meeting. There are 15 items that $1.6 million can be spent on. One of the items is basically to bump up your first-year teacher to a second year, which again is 0 to 1. So it's just 1 year of funding. We'll find out next summer if we are funded again.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Brigman?
Just to be clear, because it's a salary schedule, they don't ever go backwards. So no funding next year, these teachers still advance.
Yes, ma'am. As you know, the board agreed to a 3-year phase-in. So we're that's
Bless you.
definitely, I'm excited about that, as you know, and they will not go backwards.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, so we need to vote on the Rural Recruitment Initiative, first-year teacher salary stipend. Mr. Miller, how do you vote? Okay. And Reverend Collins, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right, and Reverend Collins votes yes? I did. Yeah, I vote yes. Okay?
I got a bad eye.
Okay, so that motion passes. All right, so next on our agenda is visitor and public comments. Reverend Mack?
Okay, Madam Chair, we have 8 visitors with us today. If you can come according to when I call your name, Ms. Beverly Gadsden Birch, Elder James Johnson, Mr. Elvin Speaks, Jakara Porter, Mr. John Singletary, Mr. Herbert Fielding, and Mr. Arthur Lawrence. In that order, please.
Good evening. I'm sure you were expecting me, so I did not want to disappoint you, like you have disappointed so many of the students at Dunston Elementary School and this community. The case of the porn on the computer and sexual abuse, whether it's one student or whether there are more. I would like to know who knew what, when, and who failed to act. So, for the present school board sitting members, if you sat on this board and knew what I know now and what the public knows regarding the severity of the Dunston case, please do our children justice and step down from the board. I'm asking you to do the right thing. Step down because apparently your ambition for higher office is greater than your love and dedication of our students, who you are sworn to protect and educate. The children at Dunston are not pawns, they're not stepping stones. They deserve to be treated in the same manner as any other students in this district. I'm willing to bet this situation as it played out would never have happened at Mount Pleasant schools. Yes, you heard me right, Mount Pleasant. It would not have happened in that district. It took 22 months to have this case investigated, and the employee remained at the school. That would not have happened. I've had many sleepless nights over this after I heard about it in the media. When the information was first found on the computer and it was sent to be checked, why wasn't the employee suspended or even transferred or placed in a different position until you could have had this investigated? This could have been done with pay, without pay, whatever the administrative decision was, but that did not happen. While the alleged investigation was taking place, the employee was given a raise and remained employed with the district. Are you kidding me? Remained employed with the district? Matter of fact, the employee received the distinctive honor of Classified Employee of the Year. If this wasn't such a serious matter, it would certainly be a laughable one. And it may have been during that almost 2 years that it took to investigate, other students could have been placed in jeopardy. So unbelievable. So who knew what and when? That's what I want to know. And I'm sure many others sitting here and in this community wants to know who knew what and when. If the district did in fact pay out $300,000, that's unbelievable. And who foots the bill? Taxpayers? There could be more students coming forward. So who's going to foot that bill? Who pays for the board's negligence and our failure to act in a timely and appropriate manner? And if we find out there are more students, what is this board prepared to do? I have seen many missteps by this board, but this is the worst of the worst. And for the superintendent and board to delay justice is intolerable and downright indefensible. Just so you know, we care about our children just like any other parent. Just like any other parent. Black children matters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening to the board.
Hi, Elder.
Hi, Dr. Postaway. I concur with my colleagues, Beverly Birch, who's now is chairperson of National Action Network State Education. I concur with everything she said, so I don't have to say too much. What I do want to say is black kids' lives matter, Sidney Cope. It does matter. I understand that you were the chairman during the time in the last 2 years. What National Action Network want to do is ask the district to find every one of those kids and have them tested. Every last one of them need to be tested who had interaction with Mr. Gathers needs to be tested. We don't need to wait till an investigation is completed. We want them tested right away. Not one time, but 3, 4, 5, or 6 times. They need to be tested. National Action Network will use all this power to outside agency to ask for their investigation also in this matters. Our kids' life do matter. We have to realize that the AIDS virus can be transmitted to several people from just one gentleman. So we need to find who those kids are. We know, and we heard there's 2 kids, but we understand there are many more they had interaction with. So we need that investigation now. And those who tried to hide this in the last 2 years, they really need to step down from their position. because this is a serious matter, very serious, and we should not play with our kids' life. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elvin Spates. Got a couple things I want to address. North Charleston leads the state in sales tax revenue. However, priority always goes first to Mount Pleasant. Where is North Charleston's High School Center for Advanced Studies? Wando High School has their regional facility, the big football stadium. Where's North Charleston's? You haven't even broken ground on North Charleston's yet. The auditorium at Burns Elementary is locked. It's told that it's unsafe. Never got a clear answer on what it is. Got kids getting sick at the school, teachers getting sick, cases of mold infection. No word from the board on anything, nothing. And the last thing I want to address is, why is this board covering up the involvement with Marvin Gathers? We know that Bill Brigham was the HR manager at that time. Cindy was the chair of the board. Reverend Collins, Mike Miller, Todd Garrett was also there. Even though Principal Malone's police report states that she was waiting to hear back from the board on what to do, this board states you got to know anything about it. Doesn't add up.
Good evening, board members.
Good evening.
As a member of the Charleston County School Board, the student safety while in school should be paramount. However, when it was discovered that teacher Marvin Gathers had pornography on the state's computer, the school board did nothing. The school board's failure to promptly act by completing an investigation of the matter compromised the safety of all students, as an allegation involving Mr. Gathers is now present before the board. As it pertains to the investigation, legal representation, I do believe, should be represented by the African American community in some way, shape, or form. The problem with this matter involves the fact that over 24 months, this board has done a complete great job of covering this matter up, keeping it out of the public's eyes. It wasn't until Mr. Gathers died before this was able to come forward. So now, as a concerned student, future parent, I would like to know who's the law firm that you all have retained? And how do we know that they're not going to cover up as you've done in the past? How can we hold you accountable as the community? And in seeking African American legal representation, we're requesting that you find someone that's trusted within the community. That way, we feel safe. We feel safe as the community. Thank you.
Hello, my name is John Singletary. I'm a concerned citizen in North Charleston. I'm glad to see that remedial measures are being taken by the board. However, what is troubling is that it was precipitated by a champion in North Charleston, Shakim, who brought a lot of the information forward that apparently started the ball rolling. When we take a look at North Charleston and this situation, it's unfortunate that the board took so long in doing the investigation and the final results coming to the public, because now what happens is there's less trust for the board by the community. What we would like to see is, we would like to see some of the fund balance, the surplus money that is in CCSD's account, be used for the public good in order to protect the children who may have been, unfortunately, affected and possibly even infected by the incident. CCSD has money available what we would like to see them do, again, is take some of the surplus funds that they have on the balance sheet and put towards some public good. One, to make sure that a firm who is representative of the community, as the young lady said, is involved in the process, that the children get tested, and that there's some type of training that goes on for not only CCSD employees, but for the public to be able to recognize and get involved when such matters occur. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Herbert Fielding. I just have a couple of questions. I would like to know what the name of the firm is that is going to conduct this investigation. Are they autonomous? And how much editorial license does the board have over this firm with respect to the final report? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Arthur Lawrence, and I'm with the Friends of Burke, and we ditto everything that you have already heard. With 27 years with the Department of Defense, this would have never happened. Should have steps in place to handle this immediately. And the individual who was allegedly charged with this should have been either fired or put on administrative leave until this was resolved. No excuse. But first of all, you have to understand something. The person that controls your history controls your future. In the state of South Carolina, in the city of Charleston, have a bad history of what they do to kids. They always complain and say that we work for the kids and looking out for the kids, but it's not so. It's an economic value. I know y'all sit up there, but y'all not in charge. It's the good old boys in Charleston who's calling the shots. If this bull was completely white, we still had the same thing. If it was completely black, it would still have the same thing. This is as long as they can keep you divided and don't take care of these kids, we're going to continue to go down this pathway. Those schools who need assistance and need help, you need to focus on those schools and bring those schools up to par. History tells us they're not going to educate those kids that are in those failing schools. It's a plan not to educate those kids. Look at Lincoln. For years, the boards and the principal and the teacher knew that Lincoln were not up to par, but it was a paycheck. And you're going to do the same thing to the rest of these schools in the city of Charleston, especially Burke. When I went to a meeting on last Thursday night, we received an email, a text, at what someone said about Burke and the kids over at Burke. It was a disgrace to see something like that come through social media. And we get up here and fight about everything else, but bring those schools up to par. And if that comes from downtown, what you think they care about Burke and those other schools? That's why what happened with this case probably fit into the same category. Hey, it's not our child, so why should we worry? You need to change things and do the right thing for all kids in Charleston County. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This concludes our public comments for tonight.
Thank you. And just for those of you who had specific questions, we keep track of all those and follow up. The next item on our agenda is the meeting street report and request for waiver. We moved the waiver. Okay, we moved that to consent.
We're good on that one.
But the meeting street folks are here to do a quick presentation, so they can come on up. And Mr. Miller is on the speaker here, so if y'all will please speak up so he can hear you.
Great. Can you hear me okay? Good evening to everyone. And, listening to the comments that we just heard reminds me or reiterates the fact that I believe the largest challenge that we face as a community and as a school district is providing educational opportunity for under-resourced kids. All black children's lives do matter. And there are folks out there that get that fact. And we at Meeting Street Schools were created exactly for that reason, because we believe every child deserves educational excellence. And you know what? If you'll pay attention for a couple of minutes, we have some pretty darn good news for you. So the way that I see it, you guys are responsible for 80-something schools. There is a group of schools that serves under-resourced kids, and those kids have special needs and are required to receive special resources in order to achieve academic excellence, in order to have the kind of results, the kinds of outcome that we expect in more affluent neighborhoods. And that is exactly what we are attempting to do at Meeting Street Schools. We have over 1,000 kids in our schools today, and we are responsible for 2 of your public schools. We run those schools in conjunction with the school board and the superintendent, and the results that I'm going to talk to you about in a minute, I think, are incredibly encouraging about what's possible, what we can expect to potentially see in those communities. Our partnership is now 5 years old, and we at Meeting Street Schools, we're a nonprofit, have spent millions of dollars of our own money innovating and figuring out the kinds of programs that work best, the kinds of structure that works best to have not only safe schools, but schools where we can see academic excellence being achieved. The 2 public schools that we are responsible for are Brentwood and Burns. And let me be very clear, because it's been not presented always correctly in the press and when people talk about us on social media. These are public neighborhood schools where we have enrollment zones that the district set, and we take all comers to our schools. And the 2 people behind me are extraordinary talents, principals, and they'll tell you a little bit about themselves, that run Brentwood and Burns. Let me just say that again. We have spent millions of dollars of our own money because we believe we must meet the challenge and figure out how is it that we can best provide a world-class education for under-resourced kids. We've done it in our public school downtown, which probably many of you have heard about, called Meeting Street Elementary, and now we are doing it in these 2 public schools. So our primary belief are 2 things. Every child can learn, and every child deserves an opportunity to receive a great education. Until we fix that problem in this community, until that becomes the case, we are not going to get anywhere near where we're all trying to get to. And so it's a challenge and something that we take on with great pride and gratitude to be able to face this challenge on a daily basis. So you say, okay, fine, those are nice words, but what's actually happening? And there's a slide up, hopefully all of you can see it, But what are the actual results that we are seeing today? The first slide we have shows our SC-ready results for 3rd and 4th grade. And a couple of things about what you're seeing here. First of all, this is the same test that all of the schools take throughout Charleston, starting in 3rd grade. And what we put on this slide is the schools that these kids would otherwise be attending. If our enrollment zone had not been created, the 3 schools next to our school are the schools that they would be attending. And so look at the slide on the left, the percent of 3rd and 4th graders meeting or exceeding their benchmarks. We're seeing for ELA, we're seeing 34% of our kids in the 2017 and 18 school year, and in math, 48% of our kids. That is not where we want to end up. We want to do better, but look at it compared to the schools that the kids would otherwise be attending. Same kids, everything's the same. And so when you see Goodwin at 14, Burns, the old Burns at 8%, Mary Ford at 4% compared to 34% for reading and 48% versus those other schools. And this isn't to pick on the schools, but it's to say that we can do so much better. And our goal is to set best practices to help the district see what works and what doesn't work in the classroom. And we've worked very closely with the superintendent to share those learnings. Let me share with you a second slide, which is the MAP testing. And how do we look on a relative basis in MAP testing? So take a look at the slide, sorry, the next, there we go. Take a look at Buste Academy and Mount Pleasant Academy and our downtown school. By the way, our downtown school is all low-income kids that would otherwise be attending failing schools, but it is a private school. Look, we're right on par with Sullivan's Elementary. Can you believe that? On par with Sullivan's Elementary. Can we do better than we're doing in the district with under-resourced kids? Pretty sure we can. Now take a look at where Meeting Street at Brentwood falls. Our average test percentile is 59%. Look at it compared to the schools that the kids would otherwise be attending. Miles above. And then take a look at the average years of growth achieved. That's the slide on the right. So let me just explain that for a second. 1 year is average. 1 year means the kid went through 1 year of education. How much did they grow? Because numbers don't lie. And the answer is, if you look at some of the under-resourced schools that the kids would otherwise be attending, the kids actually didn't grow a full year. They actually fell more behind. And at Brentwood, we hit 1 1/4 years. So they learned 1 1/4 years worth of education in 1 year. That's the progress that we need to move the bar. So when we all sit around and say there are no answers, nothing's working with under-resourced kids, it's all doom and gloom, it's just not true. It's not true because it's happening in our schools, and I'm going to let you hear from the people that are making it happen.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Campbell. I'm the proud principal of Meeting Street Elementary at Brentwood. We're really excited to show how much our kids are learning, but I just want to reiterate what Ben said and a number of the presenters tonight came up and spoke about, is that we have an absolute problem on our hands that kids of color and kids living in poverty in Charleston County are not getting the same access to quality education as their white and privileged peers. And so what we're looking at when we look at this data is kids of color and kids in poverty achieving at the same high levels and growing even more than their white and privileged peers. And it should be a level playing field because we know that every single child is capable of achieving at amazing high levels. And the problem is we've gotten caught where principals don't have the autonomy to make choices and do what is best for kids and families. And so the piece of this partnership that is so exciting to us is that we get to leverage the amazing resources of Charleston County School District, your infrastructure, your talent, the people who are sitting here and sitting at these tables, but then we have the ability to innovate and figure out what works best for kids. And so we've been able to figure out how to extend our day, extend our school year, extend our extended day program to not just be fun after school things, but to also have academics and tutoring and social emotional programs for kids. We've figured out how to redo our budget so that we can have more social workers, counselors, behavior interventionists, to have more reading interventionists, to make sure that all of our kids are getting exactly what they need. We've also figured out how to, for free, do programs where we really embrace our families and have them be part of the solution. Our families love their kids and they want the best for their kids, and they just want a school that says we want to partner with you, that doesn't put up the walls, that says let's do this together. We've also figured out how to recruit amazing teachers. We have some of the most phenomenal teachers I've ever met in my career working in our building, and it's not because we pay more. They get about the same hourly rate as CCSD teachers. It's because they're excited to be around other educators that had that same belief that all children can learn. We're so excited to be partners in this and to not only serve our students at Brentwood, but to also say it is possible. We know kids of color and kids living in poverty can achieve at the highest levels because they are. And so we hope to continue to partner with you and continue to solve the problem, not just of kids in our neighborhoods, but kids across the district, making sure every single child has an excellent education. And I'm proud to introduce Mr. Chad Whedon, the new principal of Meeting Street Elementary at Burns that opened this summer.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me speak with you this evening. Like Sarah said, I'm Chad Whedon, the proud principal at Meeting Street Elementary at Burns, about 2 months old. And a little bit about me, I have come from Chicago. It's my 17th year in education. I was a high school, middle school, and elementary school principal in Chicago for the past 7 years. And last year, Amy Mims, our executive director, invited me down to visit Meeting Street, and I fell in love with this organization. Because I saw in this organization a relentless belief that every single child can learn, every child deserves an amazing teacher in front of them, and that every community has the promise and potential to do extraordinary things in partnerships with schools. Because of Meeting Street Schools, I moved my entire family down to join this organization. It's how much I believe in it and how much I'm thrilled to be here and representing Meeting Street Elementary at Burns this evening. So a couple things I want to highlight. One is that about me, I'm a North Charleston resident, and I'm also a proud CCSD parent. I send my child to start a kindergarten in North Charleston Elementary, North Charleston Creative Arts Elementary School. And so I have both perspective as a principal and as well as a parent working in this district.
Can you explain the old Burns versus
Yep. Yep, and so a little bit about Meeting Street Elementary Burns. We started this year with pre-K 1, 2, pre-K 4, first grades and second grade, as well as kindergarten. And what Ben just mentioned is that we're only serving pre-K 4, 1, 2, kinder 1 and 2. This year, then each year will grow and include third grade, include fourth grade, include fifth grade. So we're starting with 200 students in Meeting Street Elementary at Burns, 43 staff members, and Sarah's mentioned incredible staff, committed, relentless dedication to our mission, our vision for all kids. 40% of our staff and teachers are teachers and staff of color, which we're really proud represents our community and the community that we serve. And a couple of things I also would like to highlight that Sarah had mentioned is our parent partnerships are crucial to the work that we do. Every single child in our school gets a home visit before they can come into our school, so we can welcome their family, let them know our expectations, and ensure that they're a part of our larger team and family. We've had 2 kickoff events to welcome parents to this new school. We've had 2 events, one with parents, an open house, and a breakfast with grandparents to welcome the extended family into our building and let them know about the work we're doing. And something else that's really incredible about Meeting Street Schools and the work we do is our relentless focus on teacher quality. We were lucky enough to start a week-long teacher boot camp with all of our new teachers this summer to exponentially grow them to get ready for our kids August 1st. And then coupled with on-demand coaching in our classrooms, we're able to really provide teachers direct coaching and instruction on what they need in order to meet our kids better. So because of this relentless work with parents, because of our ability to coach teachers and be there for them and meet them where they're at, we're able to see really great results for our kids and for our teachers. It is an absolute pleasure to be principal at Meeting Street Elementary Burns. I've loved working in the Dorchester-Wayland neighborhood, getting to know our leaders in their neighborhood, getting to know parents. It is an incredible neighborhood, and I'm so thrilled to represent the school and represent Meeting Street Elementary at Burns this evening. Thank you for having me.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
All right, Mr. Staub?
All right, thank you, and I know you guys are doing great work over there. I've been kind of following all the successes over the years. Now, one of the reasons we're doing this, obviously, is so Charleston County School District can learn from your successes, and I understand that the programs you guys set up are a little different from maybe some of the ones that we have across the district, whether you're in Mount Pleasant or North Charleston or downtown. Are you guys going to put on a presentation at some point? I know you guys are communicating, obviously, with the district, but of things that you see that we can try to duplicate in our traditional schools so that our residents can get the same benefits?
Do you want to talk about some of the...
Yeah, we've done that a number of times. We've been lucky enough to work with members of CCSD leadership and also some other principals around the district and teachers around the district of whether it's having them come to our school and having them sit in our classrooms, having them us sort of go through a number of the things that we think really matter. So we've been excited to do that sharing and also reciprocally learning from other schools in the district as well who are doing great things for kids. So we're really excited to continue to do that, and it's been good so far. It's sometimes you can't just take one idea and run with it, though. It's a package of things that fit together, and so I think that that's the thing that a lot of schools are trying to wrap their head around of like how you can put all those little things together to really get that big change.
I'll just add, it's a great question, and we should be doing more of it, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Reverend Collins, or did Kevin, you had your hand up first. Mr. Hollenshed and then Reverend Collins.
I want to commend you, first of all, for you even trying to take on a task like this. But I have some questions. In a perfect world, in a perfect situation, I can see where you're evolving with your students. My questions are...
Okay, Kevin, can you speak up for Michael?
Your mic closer.
My questions are, how do you deal with, one, discipline problems within your school, children with attention deficit order that a normal school has to deal with every day? Because from what I'm hearing, that it comes across in my community that you kind of cherry pick the African-American kids.
That's a complete untruth.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
So the district, you guys run the enrollment zones. We take all comers to our school.
Mm-hmm.
And for everybody out there that has been encouraging these sorts of rumors and innuendo,
Mm-hmm.
it's not helping. It's not helping solve the fundamental problem, which is how do we better educate under-resourced kids? When people spew untrue things. Your superintendent's right there, and she can tell you that we take every kid that comes to our school. And as a matter of fact, we have more than our share of kids on IEPs with significant problems. So when you say a regular school, we are a regular neighborhood school, just like any other school in North Charleston. Thank you.
Okay. Well, and that's why I asked you that question. I need to know because I get calls.
Yep.
The only way to ask it is to find out now so we can despair it or prove it right or wrong. I live in that area. I was born and raised in that area. I walk the streets that your school's on.
I sure wish you'd come visit the school, because I think versus what I understand was there when it was a middle school, you'd be blown away. Even though it's not the most beautiful building, you'll be blown away by what's going on inside that building.
Oh, I'd love to come visit. I really would.
We'd love that. Give us a day and we'll make it happen.
No, we'll do that. Tell me what you're doing, because this cookie cutter print that you're doing within your school, we just can't give you all the schools in Charleston County, you know what I'm saying, to take over. So what, in your line of what you're doing now, what can we take away from your project to kind of improve Charleston County schools? Like, I can give you one example. I think the Burns School that was on Sproul Avenue, Mr. Cobbs was principal over there. He made gains with his students over there that were very significant, which we're very proud of. So my thing is, what can you translate from what you're doing so we can kind of put into a success pattern for other schools?
I mean, it's a longer conversation, but it's the right question. And the answer, as Sarah was alluding to, it's a whole bunch of things. but it starts with, I can give you a long list, but it starts with every family receives a home visit by our staff before school starts, if they haven't been to our school before, correct? Even if they have. Every family receives a home. Imagine how that gets the partnership with the family off, because the thing that we learned was if you don't have a supportive family caregiver, someone behind you, it makes education impossible. We have an extended school day. We have a very rigorous after-school program that's not fun, but it's academically oriented. We have an extended school year. We have 2 teachers per classroom. We do a ton of small group stuff. We do things that work for this demographic, these kids in this neighborhood. And how do we know? Because we're constantly testing what works and what doesn't work. And if it doesn't work, we don't do it. And if it does, we do more of it. And so the question is, how do you share that innovation? And we're doing our best to do that. But in my view, the district hasn't done enough to say, hey, we need to get in there and really copy some of what's happening here, because they are getting these results that we're seeing here.
So in other words, Dan, what you're doing there, we can kind of mimic what you're doing in Shakur Elementary, Mary Ford, and expect the same gains.
Absolutely. It's not easy. Look at the quality of these people. Look at the teachers, the percent of teachers that we hire versus we interview. We look all over the country. We have cocktail parties in Atlanta and New York to recruit teachers. Every trick I've learned in business, I apply to this project, and I encourage my people to apply. And it's a pressure cooker to get the kinds of results we need. So it's not easy. But let me just tell you something to be very clear. The day the district figures out how to do what we're doing will make me so happy, because I'm going to go do something else. And I'm going to save my money. Nothing would make me happier.
Well, you could have had the Panthers, but I understand. but you know, and what I'm saying, because I appreciate what you're saying. Again, I lived in these areas. I think you see the great Reverend McLean back there that actually had Shakur High School and elementary school for many years, and have actually have made a lot of successful students. I know that students have changed, but I've seen these parents in that particular area. I coached a lot of those kids that I have seen today that are successful and gone on to college out of that community.
Yep.
The parents are not, I understand you do the home visits and work with the parents, but a lot of parents don't have the luxury of actually being involved in their children's lives. When they're going from pillar to post to make ends meet within their household, those are very traumatic situations that affects a child's learning ability to be in school. So that's pretty much what happened in Shakur Cherokee.
But Mr. Hollingshead, if I can say, I agree with everything that you said, but that's not an excuse for the kid not to be able to get a great education. That's the key. That is not. So what's our report card? When we have report card conferences, what's our percent attendance? 100%. Why is it 100%? Because we are relentless in contacting the parent, mom, Grammy, somebody's going to come to that school. And so the way I look at the world, and I went to all public schools. I was born without 2 cents in my pocket. I went to all public schools. I went to a public university. The way I see it, poverty is one issue, but there's all kinds of challenges that people have. That is no excuse for kids not to get a fantastic education. And that's where I'm coming from.
Well, again, I applaud you. I've seen kids in households of 6, and I've seen that one sparkling star come out of Charleston County School and now is at First Baptist, and he wants to be a doctor at Wake Forest. I've seen that very, very individual. Would like to make that more. and have that great success like that.
Yeah, we don't want that to be the exception. We want it to be the norm. Look, I'm not suggesting that the challenge is not enormous. It is enormous, but it is doable, and these numbers are showing it. And they're not where we want them to be, and I promise you one thing, when we come back a year from now and a year after that, they're going to be better. But the question that the two of you have asked is the key question. How do we get more of the schools to do what we're doing? And I welcome a separate session with the board. I welcome people coming to visit the school. It's why I'm doing it. It's why we're doing it. It's why we're doing this work so others can leverage the innovation that we're seeing in the classroom.
I would love that.
Reverend Collins, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Navarro and your staff.
Yes, sir.
For your dedication to your school and to the students. How many students attend your Brentwood location?
We have a little over 500 kids at Brentwood and about 200 at the new Burns. That'll be growing to about 500 as well.
All right, so in your SC rated data, third and fourth graders, how many students make up third and fourth grade?
We have about 160 kids in third and fourth grade.
All right. Now, do you have the SC rated data for the fifth graders and for the?
We didn't have fifth grade last year, so we'll have that this year.
What about first and second graders?
They don't take SC rated.
They do. So just only third and fourth take SC rated?
Yeah.
Right, that's the state law.
So, does your you compare to Goodwin in Burns and Mary Ford on the on your handout under your ELA scores, the 34%. What is your goal? What is your goal?
What is our goal?
What was your goal for this year?
Our goal
for the 2017, 2018 school year.
Well,
and before you answer that, you kind of give us an idea of where the kids were when you took them in.
Well, where the kids,
And you may not have that rated in at the time.
where the kids were is where these other schools are. These are the schools they would have otherwise attended, flat out. So they're the same kids. The district drew an enrollment zone and said, this is your enrollment zone, and we take all kids that come from that enrollment zone. So they would look just like these other scores would look. And that's where they came in at the same level. The difference is we're seeing over a year of growth, and these other schools are not. And so they're going to continue to get farther and farther behind, and our kids are going to continue to hopefully move along. Again, I don't want to make that sound easy, and I'm not picking on the other schools. I'm just here to say it's possible to do much, much better.
Right, that's right. Now, alluding back to Mr. Hollins's statement about discipline.
Yep.
How does your school handle children that are difficult in behavior? And what does your suspension rate looks like for these children?
Yeah, we follow the CCSD Code of Conduct, so the same policies and procedures all Charleston County schools follow. And so if a kid were to have a discipline incident that resulted in an expulsion or a transfer to an alternative setting, it would go through the same process as CCSD. But we've never had a student, do anything that would result in a transfer or an expulsion, so we've never had to go through that process with a student. In terms of our suspension rate this year, it's less than 1% because we've just started school, but last year it was around 6%. And I know that you probably remember a few years ago we had a very high percent of students being suspended, and we really took a good look at our policies and procedures and said, what's best for kids, not only the kid that's struggling, but the other kids in the classroom as well. And we came up with some really good solutions so that our suspension rate has gone dramatically down over the years. And I think that as testament to how this year's going, it's been a really great policies that we put in place to make sure that kids are supported, and it isn't a punitive system, but a system of support for kids who are struggling.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, wait, don't go too fast.
Just one question, and I think it might be more for the superintendent, but it's clear there are two things happening here. in addition to amazing principals, not to take anything away from you two. But it is some flexibilities that the state law doesn't give our district. We are not allowed to start kids at the same day that you are. We're also not allowed to do extended days in some schools and not in other schools.
We
So
also
there's,
have 3-year-olds.
and the state won't fund 3-year-old, and I don't think even fully funds 4-year-old kindergarten. So what can you guys do to produce some level of information that helps us address state-level issues so that we can start school when we feel like it's best to have the kids back in school instead of an arbitrary date?
You can fund our 3-year-old program.
And also, the second part of that is, are there other things we can start to scale? Because I hear we're going to scale, and I'm really excited to see that come across to the other side of Dorchester-Wayland. I know we drew your attendance zone for half of it, and then come, and as Kevin and I were saying, and then come south to Mary Ford and Chicora. So do we have a consistent plan to get some of this stuff in our schools this year and or next year?
Yeah. All right, so Dr. Postaway, do you want to address that?
Do you want for Mr. DeValle to address your first question first?
Sure,
The one
about how to get some of the state help.
I mean, I would say our focus, our collective focus, has been on achieving the results and showing the power of what's possible with great principles, autonomy, some additional funds. And I think we are just getting to the point where it makes sense to start asking for more. But it's a valid point. We believe, if you look at, there's a Nobel Prize winning economist who studied the best place to invest in children, the best place to invest in people. Is it job training? Is it when they lose a job, getting them back on their feet? Is it after college? Is it college itself? No. The best place was around 2.5 to 3 years old. That's where you got the most bang for the buck. Irrefutable evidence of return on investment. So in my mind, particularly under-resourced children, there ought to be a 3-year program, a 3-year available option for kids. How do we go about getting that? I think I'm game. So let's sit down and work on it. What's that?
You write a check.
So we're talking about
Can't write a check for everything, unfortunately.
influence the legislature. Dr. Postaway?
We're doing those things that can be done fairly easily, such as putting 2 adults in a classroom, 2 teachers per classroom. What we don't do well is compete for teacher talent with Meeting Street. And there are a number of reasons for that. The most high leverage investment we could make is preschool education. We can't do that under our current funding formula, so we would need change in help in getting Act 388 changed so that we wouldn't have to ask the entire state to fund that for the entire state, but it would allow the people of Charleston County to provide that for their own children. Right now, Act 388 prevents this board from doing that. So if we could get a change that just allowed Charleston County to take care of our children in the way we see fit and more in line with what Meeting Street does, I believe the people of Charleston County would be willing to provide those kinds of supports. Right now, the average, and this average will go down as you get more students moving into the upper grades, but at Brentwood, the private sources of funds are putting in an additional about $4,000 per student.
That's right.
And at Meeting Street at Burns, the private sources of funding are become up to $4,900, almost $5,000 additional dollars per student. That's because of that investment in the 3-year-old program. There's not that huge of a difference between upper grades expenditures at Meeting Street and upper grades expenditures in the school district, but it's that investment in early education that makes a difference. And I've given you figures on about what that would cost per child for a school of 3-year-olds through at least 4th grade, or 3rd grade, I should say. No, 4th grade.
Yep.
4th grade was in the calculations for last year, is an additional $4,000 per child for every student in that school, with the idea that most of the funding then is provided to 3- and 4-year-old programs.
Just to add to that, 5 years ago, we said an extra $3,000 to $3,500 a kid is what I told you, and that's about where it's going to end up.
Yeah, I think by the time you fully build out all
Yeah.
the grades in an elementary school.
Yep.
I think, Mr. Miller, you had a question?
I do. Sorry, please excuse my absence. My daughter got braces today, so I'm dealing with a 10-year-old with some pain. But I wanted to thank you guys for the presentation. Then the last time Ministry came and did a presentation that I was a part of, I believe you weren't there, but your principal was there, and I asked a question then, and I'm going to ask the question again now. And the question is, obviously, looking at your data that we got in our package and the data that you just presented today about the increase in test scores comparative to schools similar to yours, like Mary Ford and Shakora and Burns. And it makes us really wonder and question what it is that we're doing. But more importantly, it makes us question what it is that you're able to do that we're not able to do. But the question that I asked before was, I realized that by state standards and state law, we are prohibited to teach extended hours of reading and mathematics. And the question I asked to your staff before was, are you guys, do you guys have extended time allotted to teach areas like math and reading, which are obviously concentrated areas and obviously a focus of testing? And within that, you have embedded history and science and social studies. Is that what you guys do, or do you guys have class segregated out so that each of the students will see every content area?
Mr. Miller, your first point, just to clarify, when you say schools like ours, they're actually not just schools that are like ours. They are the exact schools that our kids would be attending if we didn't exist, just to be clear, because I think it's important. That's a completely apples to apples comparison. And then in terms of our coughing principal, in terms of the hours dedicated to, I don't know.
Yeah, in our extended day programming, we do have an academic focus. There is math and reading instruction, small group instruction that happens, in addition to science, social studies, and then it's also physical education, health, opportunity for kids to eat dinner and move. So it's a really balanced, holistic approach to after school where it's academics, movement, health, dinner for our kids, in addition to enrichment in social studies and science lab.
And let me just say, in terms of the innovation, because I think it's an important point. So my wife spearheaded an effort at Brentwood to get every child who's below grade level a tutor. Just started it about a year ago. And we're getting close to something like 100 tutors right now, and we're going to have a tutor for every single child who's below grade level. And you wonder, well, why does that matter? Well, it's a different voice. It's a younger person, perhaps, someone that the child might look at as a role model. It's powerful, and we're going to see results on that, and I'll be excited to come next year and tell you how much it's mattered, but I think it's going to matter quite a bit. So in terms of what we do, again, the danger is that you take away, it's 2 teachers per classroom, and that makes all the difference. Because that wouldn't be correct. It's really, and Chad alluded to this, but it's a culture of excellence, and then it's a whole package of things that in every single case puts kids first. Every decision we make, we say, what is best for kids, and that's what we're going to do.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, does anybody else have any questions? Thank y'all for coming and Ben, I'm sure we will be following up with some visits, hopefully, soon.
Look forward to it.
Okay,
Thank y'all
you.
very much.
Yeah. Yeah, next week.
All right.
Next week.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is item 7A, operations. This is the capital building program sales tax reallocation. Mr. Broe, does anybody want Mr. Broe to come up and?
No, this was,
This is item 7A, the 2017-2022 capital building program sales tax reallocation, which is.
I make a motion that we pass the proposal to put the $1.2 million into the Moultrie funding. I just want to make sure that we don't use those words too lightly. We are not taking these from the 1-cent sales tax, so no projects on that list are going to be doing without this money. This is coming from the sale of Lang and another income source from the town of Mount Pleasant condemning a section of our property.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ms. Coates. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Mr. Staubs. Do we have any questions of Mr. Broe? Mr. Broe, I just want to make sure we have on the record that in October, Committee of the Whole, you're going to give us an update on where projects are, and so we can look at where we are with all of our projects, right? Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. We can go ahead and vote. Mr. Miller, how do you vote? Okay, Mr. Miller votes yes. Reverend Collins, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, so everybody should have had the screen pop up and vote. Okay, you waiting on anybody? Okay. All right, so that motion passes. The next item is item 8A, policy JFA BCA. Oh, sorry. This is first reading of the policy for voluntary transfers for children of CCSD employees. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve, Madam Chair. I'd like to point out, because we don't post these up there, that this is in response to the board's request that staff not with students out of county be brought in, as well as considering the bus drivers and school resource officers that work within our school as employees in relation to voluntary transfers.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve first reading changes to policy JFA BCA. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Yep, we have a second from Ms. Jeffrey. Any questions? Cindy kind of gave you a recap on this. All right, are we ready to vote? Go ahead and let's vote. Mr. Miller, oh, you're not on the phone anymore, sorry. Reverend Collins, how do you vote?
No.
No? Okay, Reverend Collins votes no. Julie, did everybody else? Yes, okay. Okay, so the motion passes. I need to get better glasses. The next item is 8B. This is policy JFAA, admission of resident students. This would be second reading.
Madam Chair, this incorporates the changes that were requested by the board between first and second reading. Mr. Miller's specific language about currently, as well as including the alternatives program staff in the decision-making process. So it's got two shades of red, the red that passed first reading along with the extra language the board requested.
Okay, so we have a motion from Ms. Coates. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Reverend Mack. This would be second reading of policy JFAA. Excuse me, does anybody have any questions? If not, then please vote. Reverend Collins, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody else voted? Okay, the motion passes. The next item, item C, we already voted on before public comment, so that's item 8C. The next item, item 9A, was included in the consent agenda item, so it's been approved. Our next item is number 10, superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'll be as brief as possible. The first item under superintendent's report has to do with the recommendation from Clemson regarding ensuring access to quality. The Clemson Inclusion and Equity Report actually had 5 recommendations, with the 6th recommendation being to follow through with the recommendations. So the first recommendation is to work on closing the readiness gap. The second is to ensure that we have more efficient and accountable governance in the school district. The third is ensuring access to quality. The fourth, engaging stakeholders with some specifics about how to do that better. And the fifth, to restructure programs in schools so that we're able to provide programs more equitably to larger student bodies so that we have stability in the faculties and leadership in those schools. So the one we had to move forward with in advance of the group that's gathered to provide input was the third one, ensuring access to quality, because of the board's policy that says if we make any changes in the choice school application process or selection process, we have to let parents know that a certain number of days before the application process opens. So last time we provided to you a list of the 7 specific recommendations that Clemson made around their encouraging the board to increase equitable access. Then we gave all the board an opportunity to make suggestions to refine and modify. What you got back in today's packet was the original in the original font, and in red font, any changes that were suggested. And some of the suggested changes are significant. So our intent was to discuss this with the board tonight and to launch a team to begin selecting people to participate in this effort tomorrow. But I do not want to do that if the board hasn't had a chance to read what's in red and to be very clear that you support these recommendations. For example, under number 2, review magnet schools' residency rules and other preferences in the selection process and make needed changes. That we had put some description of how we thought we should start that. Board members added eliminate secret admissions processes and practices that we at the district might not even know are being exercised. The deadline of December 10th for the recommendations to be presented to the board was added. In terms of the online application process, as you'll recall, the Clemson group recommended that we back off from the district's practice of having online applications and give people an opportunity to apply by paper. One of the suggestions from board members was the application process for magnet and choice schools has to be made as simple as dropping a postcard off at the school or mailing it, or filling out a postcard type form online. The current process is a mess and must be made simpler if it's to give more poor and minority students access to choice. So I'm not going to read through all this red font, but I just want to make sure that I'm not that we're not asking a team to engage to do this work tomorrow if this is not the work that the majority of the board wants done. So this, in essence, represents the scope of work.
I think this represents what we discussed, and I'm glad that we're pulling in the partial magnets because we see such a disparity in some partial magnets between the magnet students and non-magnet students, and we need to eliminate that.
That was going to be my question. Where, and I read through this, where do we
7.
Where do we address the partial magnets?
Number 7.
Okay. I think in reading through all of this, this does touch on the things that this board has been talking about, I know, for at least 4 years. I personally think we really have to take a hard look at the partial magnets because it's, I'd like to see our let's do away with a lot of the partial magnets and make our neighborhood schools as strong as we possibly can. So.
I agree.
Thanks. Then I'm sorry.
That's all right. Also, I'd like to see something done to the changes made to the point system that we use at Magnet High School.
The rubric?
Yeah, sort of. But what happens when each year, at least 25% of our seats go to kids coming in
Oh, I
from
know.
private schools.
Right.
Or more, 20% or more. That's what that means, our kids are bumped off that would have otherwise had those spots. And I mentioned last year that if a child has already been attending CCSD schools, it should be given some type of point credit for that. That levels of scale, that kids coming in from other places, who've been in private school all their lives and had the advantage of the one-on-one teaching, and our kids don't have that, for financial reasons.
Right.
A point of advantage for our kids at Charleston County levels the playing field. That gives them an equal opportunity to get in.
And you're absolutely, there's no denying that between 18 and 22%
Higher.
go to students who have never attended a CCSD school.
Usually 25% or better.
I've made note, that didn't appear here for tonight. I don't think we received that feedback, but we will add it to make sure that that's here. And I will also just say, I think that matter might have been litigated once. So
yeah, we need to make sure it's legal.
We'll have to check to make sure that.
Yeah, I think, my opinion, as long as it's fair to everybody, that should cover the legal parameters, that we're doing it for all the kids. Now, if we discriminate and not do all the kids, that's a different story.
Mr. Hollenshed?
The inconsistency of, like, for example, the sibling policy at Butte, there's none at Academic Magnet or School of the Arts.
Twin policy, yeah.
So.
None at schools that have a admissions
No
requirement.
magnet school said Houston, another downtown school.
All right, well, let Mr. Hollenshed finish what he's saying.
Thank you. So, we need to address that, and make it fair across the board. That is one issue that we really need to tackle. We know we kind of ducked that a couple of years ago, but we really need to address that issue.
Is fair to have it or not have it?
Well.
The board voted it down 2 years ago.
Hold on,
I think we need to re-examine it.
Kevin, finish.
Well, for example, every child is not the same. If there's an admission policy at one school and say my daughter tests better than my son, but my son gets into school because of a sibling policy, that's not fair to other kids that are able to make it into that school.
Okay.
So that child should be able to test equally as any other child would.
Okay. That sounds reasonable.
Okay,
Just one
anybody
more
else?
thing. Just
I'm
one more
Reverend
thing.
Collins.
Also, I want to make sure that when we are having auditions, especially performance-based auditions, two things. The performance alone cannot be the deciding factor who gets into the school in our art schools. The academics must be considered and included as part of the decision. And as far as auditions is concerned, we need to move to some type of blind audition where the judges don't know who's auditioning. I don't know whether they got to wear a mask and a robe to put on, or they stand behind a curtain, or the judges go outside and stand in the sun while the kids are inside in the cool. But it shouldn't need to be determined of race or background or anything about who's auditioning. In fact, we may have to move to something where the judges receive a recommendation from another panel. But there's something got to be put in place. And when I went to the state tryouts and I saw that's what they were doing, there was a panel up, and the children played their instruments. They played the instruments, and they couldn't tell who was playing, and it was one judge. So one judge per student, and that judge made a recommendation, yea or nay, but couldn't see the kids at all. And I thought that was pretty fundamental, pretty good, and I like that we don't see who's performing at all. All you see is the skill or the talent being displayed, and that's it.
Reverend Collins, what school was that? I
was,
would love for us to see
just
their
outside of
admissions
Columbia,
processes.
But the kids came from all over in the state now.
I wonder if it was the governor's school.
Yeah, all
was
over
it
the state.
What was it, Dr. Postaway?
It could either have
Was the
been,
band.
The governor's.
it could either have been for the governor's school or
Lexington,
the
I think.
all-state band.
The all-state band.
All-state band, which
Lexington,
isn't a school, but it's the
Yeah,
band.
all
Oh,
of the state that
okay.
came in. So
Okay.
all the kids were fairly treated because none could be seen.
But
or
it wasn't
viewed.
admissions to a school, it was the all-state
The
band.
kids did all-state band, right.
All right, who else? Any other suggestions?
I see, we have that covered in 2A.
I know.
Kevin?
As to the arts program, that's great, you know, what they're doing there, and I think it needs to be fair. I agree with you, Reverend Collins. But I like to see arts put back in all our schools.
Absolutely.
I mean, we can't, we're limiting, putting the bottleneck of kids that want to have the ability to perform and to be able to make it to Juilliard. I tell you something, give you a good example. My niece in Atlanta, Georgia, she was learning to do clogging. I didn't know what the heck clogging was. And she learned clogging. And actually, when she got to clogging, she started dancing. And she ended up in the School of Juilliard. And she's a senior this year. But the public school system allowed her to perform and to become better. We should not be able to segregate our kids like that here in Charleston County. We really need to look at funding band programs in schools along with other arts programs to give our children some sort of way out. You just heard from the gentleman just a minute ago from Meeting Street Academy. But children, again, when they come from very depressed backgrounds, sometimes that band instrument or that art class gives them a chance to relieve themselves. So we definitely need to look at trying to strengthen up all our schools.
Thank you. The board made a significant investment in the arts this past year, and you will have the opportunity to do that again. And we need to get changes to Act 388, because you all are bumping up against the state limitation on
If you got a
the amount of
suggestion
money.
for changing Act 388, that you can wave a magic wand and change the delegation, I'll be glad to do whatever I can. But that's something I know is a tough road to balance.
And everything has to be weighed. Everything we want to do has to be weighed.
It's what we have to give up.
In light of the barrier, the ceiling that places on the people of Charleston in terms of what they might choose to do for their schools. So we are in violent agreement with everything you said about the need to invest in arts. There's one other thing I just want to call to everyone's attention. 6A, CCSD staff will develop a demographic profile. So that was there before, but here's the new part. I want to make sure that you know this is here because it's in red and it's added. All charters need to follow the state's guideline of being within 20% of our county demographics. Based on guidelines, if charters are not between 18 and 58% African American, 26 and 68% white, 1 and 29% Latino, or 1 to 21% Asian, then they are out of compliance. So those demographic calculations have to be redone every year. But I want to make sure that you know that this is in here, and so if it's not what you want a committee to bring back to you, then let's not ask members of our public to work on that particular.
It is exactly what members of this board asked you to put in there. In fact, it was one of Mr. Miller's recommendations, so I don't feel like we should pull it out when he's not here to discuss it.
I just want to make sure that a majority of board members support everything that's here, because this becomes the scope of work that we're going to ask a person to lead, and they're going to be engaging community members, and it would be embarrassing to come back later and say, this wasn't really what the board meant.
So what is the practical effect of this? I mean, this sounds like something that probably could be compiled in half a day by somebody and telling you whether a school is, I could probably tell you which schools are not compliant with this in the charter school system across Charleston County. What's the practical effect? Are we just going to send a letter saying you're outside of compliance? And
I think that's up to the board.
Oh, okay.
We have reported to you.
Why don't we
before
find out
when
what
a
it
charter
is
school's
before we
out of
decide how to
compliance.
move on it?
Yeah.
And sometimes the board takes action, and sometimes the board says there are some extenuating circumstances here.
Right.
So, since this came from a board member, I don't know, but I assume that the person intends to use the information.
Right, it goes both ways, yeah.
The sibling policy is in here. It mentions one school in particular, Reverend Collins. So if you all are fine with this, we will start a committee working on this. If you would like to suggest nominees to serve on the committee, would you please provide the names? I don't know that we can accept everyone who's nominated, but we certainly would like, we've created a small
And a
list.
couple board members serve also.
I think that's a great idea, if you can afford to give this the time. It is going to take quite a bit of time, but I think it would make it easier for the board to consider the recommendations if board members serve. So let me know if you're interested,
I'm
please.
interested.
Noted. Any other questions on this?
Nope, move forward.
Okay, the other, thank you. The other item is to discuss the superintendent's evaluation for the 2017-18 school year. And you had approved the evaluation format moving forward. This format is very similar. It takes the 10 goals that we had agreed on, spells them out in here in a little more detail than was perhaps the case in the other documents that you looked at. And I'm suggesting that we try to do that at the next board meeting. At the Committee of the Whole, we would actually convene an executive session after the Committee of the Whole, and then a special called meeting, so the board can take care of this next time.
For 18-19 evaluation?
No, this is
For this
17.
past year, for 17-18.
But it would be done this November for the 17-18. We still have that lag time.
I'm suggesting we do
Do
it
it
at the
in
next.
October.
At the next, right, Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay?
Will we have all the student achievement data necessary by
I think so. We've given you
mid-October?
everything we have to date, and the one thing we're holding, it used to be work keys, it's called WIN, I believe now, and those data should have been released last week, but they were embargoed because of a hurricane. So we are thinking they'll probably be out in the next week,
Okay.
which would put, I think, almost all the major assessment data that you would need. We don't have control over College Board or ACT releases.
But do we have those?
I don't think we even have them.
Everything that the release date, if it's not embargoed, it's been released.
So what is the release date of ACT?
I don't know that we have that yet. We have a matrix where we track that, and I don't recall seeing the exact date at this point.
I don't think we know. But what we've done, when I've been here, if we haven't had data for that year, we use the data from the most recent data we have. And I don't think that puts us in a position of examining those data twice.
Okay?
And then the other thing I'll say is, I think the way we do public comments puts the board at a disadvantage sometimes, because people comment and say what they wish to say, and the board doesn't have a chance to respond. So I will simply say, for those who spoke tonight and are still in the audience, the incident occurred in 2014. A lot of the people who are involved in decision-making roles are no longer employed with the district, and we can find no record of the matter going to the board, either in executive session or in public session. Natalie Ham is the attorney for our district. Natalie, if you'll raise your hand. If you want to have particular conversations with her about the work she's done to date and the work she's done to engage outside counsel to do a thorough investigation, we would invite you to do that. And Natalie knows what she can discuss and what cannot yet be discussed, but we do want everyone to know there is no reason for us to want to sweep anything under the rug. We will share all information that can be shared publicly. If there are specifics that by law we can't release at a particular time, we will abide by the law, but it is our intent to make sure the public knows what went wrong, how it went wrong, with whom, or the positions at least, that were in place, and to tell you that at the time we became aware of the situation. Terry Nichols is sitting here. She's one of the administrators who dealt with the situation. We immediately sent letters home to the children in Dunstan School, and in particular reached out to children who might have worked directly with the individual who has been mentioned tonight. We regret terribly. It's a tragic situation, and we have done everything we could possibly do to deal with it in a way we felt was appropriate at the time that this board became aware of it. And again, we have absolutely no evidence in either executive session documents or public meeting documents that the board was briefed on the matter before. We've not been through all the documents, and in fact decided to turn all of that over to outside counsel with a directive to get to the bottom of any questions that have been asked. So if you desire further information, Ms. Hand will respond to the extent that she possibly can. If you want to ask Ms. Nichols about the letter or see a copy of the letter, Ms. Nichols, will you raise your hand? We would be happy to provide those sorts of, that sort of information to you.
And while Reverend Collins and I don't agree on some things, for all the offices he has run for since he's been elected to the board, and that's been 3 or 4, I can say without hesitation, it has not affected his commitment to the children of Charleston County. So I wanted to make sure that people who thought that because board members had run for other offices or were holding these as stepping stones, I can tell you without hesitation, Reverend Collins has never wavered in his commitment to Charleston County kids, despite running for other offices.
Thank you, honey. That was so nice of you.
How about y'all lightning one strike?
Okay, so other announcements. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we have the advanced ed at 1 tomorrow, and
Go home so we can come back.
lunch will be provided starting at noon. Do we have any other items?
To adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? All in favor, signify by aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.